So, Rick, Tom also, JM Eagle, we're plastic pipe conduit manufacturers. Key word you said, strategic. What's the implication of strategic? Wes is concerned about the strategic issue of Amazon being out there. So where does value, the strategic is defendable differentiation and the ability to make a reasonable profit for delivering goods to the market. So one of the things that we're not talking about, nobody talks about it, but I yearn for the day when distributors lined up with manufacturers and joined in a partnership that you could depend upon each other to bring product to market at a fair margin. If we all race through even the smaller guys to an Amazon model, what is in it for the manufacturers to just provide all the information and put it out there so that all the distributors on an arbitrary basis provides all the information so that it can compete with Amazon supply, but where's the strategic position then for the manufacturers? Do the distributors ultimately become the front-end sales force of the manufacturers and then remove all of that? Because I'm just looking for where does this go? Once you have all the data, there's no asymmetry of information, the margin's gone, it's a race to the bottom. So that's a real problem that we all have to deal with. Where does all of that margin go when it just turns out to a complete commodity? Why would the manufacturers not insist that their strategic asset of information, the distributors should still come to the manufacturers, and so that the end users understand the value of the manufacturer's product and that there's still position in there for shared margin and competition?
Well, I think the product is still the product. The product solves a problem. The product is a solution. To me, information is a commodity. We live in a highly commoditized information world. I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to commoditize the product. It doesn't have to commoditize what we're selling as a channel into the market. We're still selling value. Someone has to manage things. You can create the most sophisticated systems in the world, but if we believe this is a people business, if we believe relationships matter, then people are doing something in that relationship. It transforms information put together in the right format to help deliver a solution. I'm sure there are highly complex artificial intelligence systems that can do that. But I still believe the most efficient thing to aggregate information into a solution is the human mind. I need product information here, and I need product information here. And I go sit down with Bill, and Bill's building a building, and I'm aggregating all this together, and I'm managing that for him. I'm taking that complexity off. If Bill can go to some system that can take all those 50 things from a half-inch lock nut up to a lightning protection system and put that on his iPad, I can tell you as a channel, I've got nothing for Bill. When that system gets created, okay. But today, our folks are adding value through managing complexity. But the information, the bits and bytes that we need to get, frankly, it's highly commoditized. I mean, if we all think we're insulating ourselves from our competitors because I'm hiding my data, I think that stick the head in the sand, get shot in the ass. Excuse my language. Yeah.
But again, to Tammy's point, it's expensive. The perception is because we're all like our kids now. We're internet people. We just assume the data is free. We assume it's a commodity. Tammy pointed out there's a lot of arms and legs moving to try to clean it up. Your IT guy on the last session said he took them all day Saturday to pick out 16 SKUs and figure out how clean that data was. That's not a walk in the park.
Well, and I would tell you, you can go to HBR podcast and Google the Amazon CEO, and he will clearly state that he does not care about, not only does he not care about margin, he does not care if his margins decline, because that's not his value proposition to the market. So we have a completely different model than Amazon.com. So that's a whole, the whole business side of that conversation and what they're doing with margin and what's happening with margin erosion and how we fight that. I don't think we can start till we have the right data, right? But then there's that's the next problem, right? Okay, we have the data, but we don't want to be Amazon.com. We care about margins. We want to make more money. So, I mean, we're going to have to figure that out too. And I think that's going to go to the systems issue, right? Because we need to take it to the next step. Amazon.com is pieces, parts. We need to provide data that provides value that sells a total solution, not pieces, parts data. So that's, I think that's the answer. That's the next step. But we can't get there until we serve it up.
And just as an organizational standpoint, from a manufacturer standpoint, I don't think when you say you're going to take on, data as a new function in the business, you can't just say, well, the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm sharing the product data with my channel partners. If that's your sole justification, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, it's a huge, you have to look at the entire pie. I mean, you got to look at all the internal pieces. You got to look at all the systems that utilize this data that starve for it and all. You have to look at your support costs. Then you have to look at the channel partners to see what they're, if you look at it just one piece, one sliver of a pie, you'll never be able to justify a data management strategy within your organization. You just won't be able to do it. But when you look at the entire thing, it gets easier and easier and easier and easier. And then, I mean, I think data is a commodity. I'm totally agreeing with Wes. What we're seeing now is that the data that's out there is incorrect. So what's worse to an organization? Having bad data out in the marketplace or having 100%, we all want to strive to be 100%, accurate data for every single SKU out in the marketplace. I think the benefit clearly just in that piece is just going to outweigh. But you truly as a manufacturer cannot just take one piece and say, this is why we're doing it. Because especially the bigger the organization, it's going to be really, really hard to sell through the organization. But when you look at the entire thing, it gets really easy, to tell you the truth.
Tammy, to basically addressing you, but addressing all manufacturers, and I actually work a lot with data with like my hands, and I know what you mean. It's extremely difficult. Oversimplifying it is a crime to some extent. But I would encourage the electrical industry to look at the automotive industry as a reference point. And I don't have the answers. This is free advice. So you can't sell an auto part without looking it up in a catalog. There's a bunch of boxes on the shelf in the back, and they've got numbers on them, right? Which water pump do I pull off? So they go to the catalog on every reference, and they basically ask you the make, model, year of your car and the part type, and they look it up in a big database, right? But my perception is that they spend a lot more money on customer-facing data than the electrical industry. And if you wanted to go talk to an AC Delco or a Federal Mogul or any of the big, the tier one manufacturers in the automotive aftermarket, I think you'd find that their investment in pieces and parts data is a lot higher than what this industry does because they always had to look it up in a catalog. And this industry for years grew up on a cost structure that was built around the counterman knew the answer. Mm-hmm. And so your cost structure allows for a penny per pound to do catalog work, right? Because that's the historical cost structure of the industry, right? But I think in this new world, I think it's going to be like 2.5 cents a pound to prep the data, and that the industry is just going to kind of stay behind until they budget a little bit more in there because the cost is coming out at the counterman end, but it's going back in at the information prep end of the thing. And there are examples of industries out there who do that, and sort of what the right investment level would be is probably something you could look into and find out without having to guess. So if you guys want me to help with that, I will sometime.
We have a question.
Yeah. Data's quintupling or sextupling or whatever every year. More and more is being gathered. These mature organizations like Amazon, Ranger, are spending as much time or maybe even more time on customer information than on product information. So I would suggest that one of the ways that manufacturing can be paid off is through the customer information that would be available from the distributor side, whether it's from blogs or social networking or whatever's out there. Big data is the next big thing in our industry, and I think that I'd just like to hear the panel's response to customer data in addition to marketing?
I could comment on that from a manufacturer's point of view, and you're absolutely right. Taking that data back and doing something with it is key to finding, and that's one of the key ways to find out feedback from what's going on out in the industry. What do they like, what they don't like, and what could be done about it, not just ignoring that. So we do have areas in social media where we do tweet out and we can get responses back from distributors. So I think that's a very valid point. And I think that if you do ignore it, you're going to cause the same kinds of problems you have with item data as well. So you do have to have a strategy of how you're going to handle those responses and how you're going to respond to them as well.
You know, you raise a really, really good point, though, and this is not all about e-commerce data. It's not all about web storefronts or whatever we want to call it, mobile apps. Big data. The use of that. One of the uses within our organization is taking our customers market by market and profiling them in terms of what they're buying and what they're not buying, more importantly, and where are those gaps where we have opportunities. It's interesting. We just had our board meeting. I did a little exercise in preparing for that because, Tammy, back to your point, margin and where's it going and how do you extract more? Well, how you extract more is not every product group delivers the same landed margin. So you look for those product groups that tend to have higher margins. You get your right mix, your blended margin goes up, right? It's pretty simple. Well, in doing that analysis and extracting that data out of our system so we could look at what we're selling product group by product group, lo and behold, you know what I found? The hierarchy, the product information that would allow me to dump products into their groups to see what I'm selling, I made some very, very bad assumptions because I assumed the products that I got out were actually in the right product groups. So when I started making big fat claims about here's what we're selling and not selling, someone called me out and said that can't possibly be right. And you know what? They were right. The data was not in the right buckets. So here we are, trying to see what kind of value we can add by going to our manufacturers and saying here are product groups we're not selling and we have bad information. So how much time now are we going to spend trying to get the data in the right buckets to do actually what we need to do with it, and that's add some value to it. So to a lot of the points up here, I think we have somewhat of a dysfunctional model, and I've said this before. We have an organization, and the Grangers of the world, God love them, they do what they do. They're doing their own data, and they pound on the table and say, thou shalt send me this, and I guess they have the 800-pound gorilla that they get whatever it is they want, I guess. I don't know. I suspect they probably build a lot of it themselves too because they can. And our industry, we're relying on the goodwill. At the end of the day, the product, and I'm going to make this pitch for IDEA, at the end of the day, the product that IDEA attempts to flip around into the channel relies on the goodwill of a bunch of folks to make sure it's correct. I'm telling you, that is a dysfunctional model. That is an unsustainable model. I would challenge the committee here that, all the folks that were introduced are leaders in our industry. Blow it up. We've got to do something different because we're 14 years into this issue called IDEA. And they can't do it alone. They can't go pound on folks and say, thou shalt give me this data because the channel needs or wants it. We've got to want to as a channel to clean it up and fix it and do what's necessary for the channel to stay competitive with these new threats.
Thank you.
That was the second part of the sermon, I guess.
Is there a part 3?
Stay long enough.
Any final questions of the panel? Panelists, do you have any final remarks that you want to build on? With the exception of Wes and his third term.
You tend to get into these mega meetings and it tends to become very negative. The positive side of it is I think we have the opportunity to open up the channel. It gets back to efficient markets. I mean, where's the margin? Margin can be in price or margin can be in efficiency. And if we create a sustainable and evolving channel that's surrounded by the information the customer needs, the channel would become more efficient. I mean, distribution, wholesale distribution is a very flexible and agile entity that has survived a very long time. A large segment of our economy moves through distribution. So, we talk about these threats and it's not doom and gloom. Heck, I want to figure out how in the world we can be better at what we do. So manufacturers need to make money. I want you to make money. I mean, we're all in this thing together to make money and to sustain our businesses for our children and our grandchildren. We got to be efficient. I guess that's part 3.
Thank you. Jim, do you have any closing or?
No, I was just going to say that, first of all, thanks to our panel. I thought it was an interesting discussion. Maybe some people came here looking for answers. I think there was a lot of more questions posed maybe than answers given. But I think we as an industry ought to take Wes's challenge and say, if we've got a dysfunctional model, let's blow it up and get a model that isn't dysfunctional and will work. And I think, to me, that's the number one message I got out of this meeting is we've got to do something. So we had a very lively discussion. Again, thanks for all your time and effort. And if there's no more questions, have a good rest of the national meeting, and we'll see you next year in San Francisco.